The Colorado Buffaloes returned to Folsom Field this week after a difficult loss on the road at the Houston Cougars, but they are hungry. The 2-1 Wyoming Cowboys await, and today we have quarterback questions plaguing this team, defensive questions plaguing this team, but how exciting is it to have Buffaloes football back here in Boulder?
It's going to be great. Obviously, I think the rumor has it that Ralphie will be back, so I'm psyched for that.
That's number one question on my mind is, will we have a Ralphie run to post-game? There's going to be parents here this weekend. Can we fire them up? It's a late kickoff. I think it might be a key to starting out hot.
Yeah, it is a night game, and I think that was the big kind of statement from this past weekend. So let's see how the Buffaloes come out and perform. Did they get a night practice in this week? Probably not, but we're going to see if it helps them at all.
So looking back to last week, game against Houston, very disappointing loss. Who or what specifically disappointed you in this game?
Well, obviously the performance on the field was not good, unacceptable. But I have to look at the coaching after a game like that, where Deion Sanders says they had an amazing week of practice, an amazing week of preparation, and then they go out on the field and that happens. There's obviously something wrong with the preparation if it's that. And just the plan to roll with Staub obviously looks bad now, and maybe we wouldn't have been opposed to it last week. But the decision to go with that and kind of the lack of plan, kind of the lack of outline and direction, at least with the offense and the quarterback situation, I feel kind of led to that defeat. And so I think coaching has to be to blame for that loss.
Yeah, listen, I think that CU didn't do anything in particular better than Houston in this game, right? They lost the turnover battle, lost time possession battle significantly, and also were flagged for some pretty stupid errors in the second half as well. So, again, we're talking about an unprepared football team. It was a short week, I get that, but for the amount of expectations that was on this team, that just wasn't an acceptable performance for Deion and company.
Yeah, I'm going to look at a element that's hard to quantify with stats and numbers, but that's the physicality of this team overall. Coming into conference play, you talk about asserting yourself in the trenches, establishing the run, stopping the run at Houston. Colorado got ran all over. 200 yards again for the second time this season. You're giving up over 200 yards. That is unacceptable. That shouldn't happen once a season, let alone twice in the first 3 weeks. So the fact that Colorado hasn't been able to establish any sort of physicality, whether it's the hitting or someone who comes down and lay the boom. I know we talk about a guy like Cam Silman-Craig last year, who was a really small guy, but he came up and he made hits that were, dare I say, game-changing. And that's the kind of momentum and thumper that Colorado has really been lacking, and those kind of physical plays that they're missing from the offensive line and defensive side that I think they're going to need to improve on before they go to Wyoming.
Yeah, building on that, I think that the run game was certainly the thing you have to look at as disappointing. Defending the run game, I should say. Like you mentioned, 209 yards was the total they gave up. 83 yards to Connor Wigman. That is specifically what I want to talk about. This is not a mobile quarterback. Connor Wigman is a pocket passer physically, and that's what he's been throughout his career. And we gave up 83 rushing yards to him, and he was running on us very similar to how Haynes King did. And we've given up the quarterback's career high in rushing yards 2 out of the 3 weeks to start this season. And that, like you said, that's physicality. That's a physicality issue. And right now, the Buffs seem timid on defense, but we do want to look still through some of the diamonds in the rough. Who or what did impress you during that game?
I think you have to look at the defense, and you can't look at anything that went well as a unit overall. But a guy like Tawfiq Bayard, a guy like Alexander McPherson, youngsters that I thought made great impressions. McPherson's tape was amazing. I think he maybe only had half of a sack or something like that, but his performance, I thought, is not indicative of some guy that's a 3-star in his 3rd career college game. That is a guy that went to IMG Academy. Him and London Merritt both seeing some time. A lot for a freshman, and I want to see more of that from the Buffs. I want to see them more lean into the guys that are young and have room for improvement, rather than these proven talents that are in the secondary, especially, and even up front, that just haven't looked up to par.
Yeah, for me, Harrison, I'm going to go to the offensive end, right? It's the amount of wide receivers who caught a pass from Ryan Staub, especially in those first few series. I think Ryan Staub completed 6 straight passes to 6 different receivers to start the game, but 3 of them in particular, Amarian Miller, Draylon Miller, Joseph Williams, and Ja'Kalen Taylor, I should say, 4 of them had 3 or more receptions. That's a positive going into a week against Wyoming where you're hopefully going to make some things a little bit better on the offensive end.
Yeah, me personally, University of Houston actually provides cards to their students to wheel around their luggage and stuff to broadcast. So that really impressed me. But I'm just kidding, guys. Looking at the football aspect, it was hard to really, pinpoint someone who had success in a bright spot. And I think, as unfortunate as it is to say, the bright spot of this team has been the special teams. Right? The kicking unit, Buck Buchanan, has been amazing and consistent getting touchbacks. Alejandro Mata is yet to have a miss. Damon Greaves has done a great job of flipping field position. Of course, Cam Hawkins, the long snapper, you never hear his name called, which is a great thing. He hasn't had any mess-ups, right? So I'm just going to shout out those 4 because, outside of that, there's really not much more praise I could give to that team from that performance.
Yeah, I want to look at Simeon Price, and he was obviously in a bit of a limited role. He was questionable all week leading up to this game, but then he was able to come in, and he was incredibly productive. We saw him take 5 carries for 51 yards, a 38-yard touchdown. I mean, averaging 10.5 yards per carry. This is a guy who came in after being hurt all week long and put up a really good performance and led this backfield, hoping that leads to an increased role for him when he's fully healthy here in these coming weeks. And hopefully they can continue to ride the hot hand because they are going to need him badly in that backfield and to be a spark plug to this offense. But looking at this loss, we talked about it last week a little bit. All of us pretty much thought that Houston is sort of on the lower end of teams you're going to play in the Big 12. And to go out there and get gashed the way that they did, does this spell doom for the rest of the Buffalo's Big 12 schedule?
I'm going to say no for right now because it is one game, but they are in big trouble. Houston is not a world beater. They, have looked great so far this season, but you look at, the way they've won games, it hasn't been indicative of reaching the next level. Obviously, Willie Fritz is a good coach. I'm not going to doubt his ability to improve the team for this season. I think they could possibly be back in the bowl game hunt. But this is not a competitive level that you want to see Colorado play at this point. I think we may have talked about, last week, y'all might have talked about this being a close game. This wasn't close. This was, a farther game apart than the score would indicate. Yeah. And you can't see that at all. And so they're in deep trouble.
I have a question for you. Was that environment rowdy at all? What do you think?
I don't know if rowdy is a great term, but it was actually, more field than I think, more full, I would say, than it kind of looked initially. I think, the cameras at first kind of made it seem like it was a half-packed stadium, but eventually, the Houston crowd showed up. Or they were just a few minutes late. You had to give them time.
You were on boots on the ground. I can't dispute that opinion, but listen, this is a less than 40,000 attended stadium, and when you talk to people in Texas, what are they doing on a Friday night? They're going to high school games. They're not going to watch Houston Cougars. This is a program, guys, who's won 5 combined conference games in the past 2 seasons. It's probably honestly the least daunting atmosphere you would go to all season, I could argue. And again, they just didn't show up. We're flat-footed out of the half. That's my problem with this. Houston, this kind of spells doom in my opinion because, again, you look at the rest of the conference slate schedule. I don't see many more wins on there for CU guys.
Yep.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be an uphill climb. And you mentioned that environment. And that communication was still an issue for the defense. And it, brings up a big point of concern, like you mentioned there, Shane, because if you aren't able to get your plays in and you're having to burn timeouts in situations, to make substitutions in that little of crowd noise, what are you going to do when you have to go into, these big game environments later on in the season? It's going to be very hard for Colorado. But I don't think this spells doom. I think it spells reflection time. This team's going to have to look in the mirror very quickly and figure out what the problem is, whether it's personnel, whether it's scheme, whether it's execution of the actual assignment, and get to the bottom of it, or they're going to be, chopped liver soon.
Yeah, I agree with you. It is early. I think this is early, and I don't want to be jumping to overreactions. But I'm not going to lie. If I'm on this coaching staff, or if I'm a donor right now, I'm seeing this type of performance against what is supposed to be the tune-up game for the Big 12, that I'm hitting the panic button a little bit. I'm at least tapping it. Like I'm at least I'm hovering over it at the very least. Like the panic button, the case is off, and I'm hovering my hand over it right now because. You look at the rest of their schedule, who else really stacks up with Houston in terms of like an equivalent team to that we're going to play?
I think it's maybe your favorite team, Kansas State.
Maybe Kansas State. Maybe Kansas State, maybe West Virginia.
Maybe, yeah.
You got maybe 2 more teams right now that are playing at the level of talent that we see from Houston. Maybe UCF. I mean, we haven't really seen a lot out of them just yet. They've won their games though. But you're not going to find that anywhere else. You're not going to find many more games like that on the schedule, and you're going to find a lot of teams that are a lot better than Houston. There are a lot of those teams.
And they're coming up quick.
They are coming up quickly.
In succession.
It's a gauntlet.
It's one after the other. You have to run.
Yeah.
You're facing a gauntlet after getting stomped by what's supposed to be your sort of tune-up. I'm a little nervous. But we do have a game coming up this week against Wyoming. It is going to be the Colorado Buffaloes taking on the Wyoming Cowboys. This is looked at as a game that can be the rebound, and if there is going to be some sort of pushback to how this season has started, and you're going to turn this ship around, feels like it has to be here. How important is a win in this game?
Not important at all. It's important to dominate it.
Yes.
It's not important to win it. It's important to take the opponent's will and just beat them essentially to a pulp. I mean, you have to hope that this team has to find confidence. It has to be confidence, whether it be in the score, in the yardage. I think the score is less important than how they win, which we'll get to later. But you need to see a dominant all three phases game from the Buffs, because we haven't seen that this year.
For me, it's again, I like Harrison sentiments, right? Like this game cannot look like Delaware did. Okay, people forget. Before Ryan Staub's 2-minute drive to end the first half, this was a 10-7 point game, right? Delaware was down by a field goal before Ryan Staub did what he did. That was a competitive game, okay? CU did not look good. That was supposed to be a rebound game from Georgia Tech. That wasn't a rebound. That was a turnover, fast break going the other way, right? So, listen, they can't come out flat and lethargic. The crowd hopefully will have some enthusiasm. It's a night game. There's going to be a lot of people there. We'll see what happens. But, guys, let's not just brush off Wyoming, right? They held that potent Utah offense. We'll talk about it later, how good that Utah offense is, to 3 points in the first half just last Saturday.
Yeah, this team's going to have to come out fast and with some, urgency, not, running 2-minute drive or late in the game garbage time when the offense is finally, pushing down the field. You got to come out, explode. You got to give your deep shots early. I think first or second play, Colorado needs to come out and take a deep shot, earn the respect from that defense, because so many times they're just honing in on that bubble. They know exactly where the ball's going. They're trying to get to the outside, or they're playing that inside zone. It's super easy for the defense. You need to keep them honest and establish some integrity, because a loss is not an option against this Wyoming team. And if you are the Colorado Buffaloes, you need to be taking this opponent very seriously, because they will come in and thump you if you don't.
Yeah, I think that Colorado should win this game by all counts. Colorado should win this game, and they should win it big. Looking in the universe where they lose this game, you got to lay it out here to this coaching staff and to this team. If you lose this game, you will not win for the rest of the season. You are in for a Big 12 slate of loss after loss after loss after loss. And it's a bad situation. I mean, we mentioned it in the Delaware show that, they lose, it's riots, it's chaos, it's benchings, it's the same sort of thing with Wyoming. I think Wyoming's potentially a slightly better team, but this is still a scary situation if you lose this game. But we saw with the win over Delaware, we talked about kind of the same narrative of, can this be a launching pad? Can you propel yourselves forward with a win in this game? That didn't seem to happen, even though it was a bit, it was a good score. They did ultimately blow them out, even though it was competitive. It didn't end up turning around into anything. Can this game be used as a launching pad, or will the winning not be contagious like it was with Delaware?
It won't matter because of a score. It can be a launching pad. Any game can be a launching pad. There's always time to find momentum. It's football. But for an opponent like Wyoming, a win by exactly like how Delaware happened is not going to give you any confidence against a team like BYU, where the talent level is just going to be on another level. It has to be. I would almost rather them be down early and then make a second half comeback or something. I need to see urgency out of this team. Otherwise, I don't have any hope.
Yeah, for me, again, listen, I'm going to talk about a little bit of why I think that CU has to look not just like dominant, but like shut out this Wyoming offense, which by the way isn't that good. We can get to that a little bit later. But listen, guys, right? CU has been bad in the second half this season. They've been outscored in the third quarter by 14 against the 2 Power 4 opponents that they played. That comes down to coaching for me. Leo, you talked about it earlier. They're just not, they're not creative enough, right? People aren't second guessing what this team is doing on offense. For me, right now, though, Wyoming is going to sense the blood, like you're saying, Liam. So it's important, I think, for CU to come out. You called it a launching pad, though, the Delaware game. That launching pad went straight back down the takeoff against Houston. I mean, if that was a launching pad, I don't know, is that a good launching pad? That is by no means a good launching pad. So hopefully that's not the same case when you go and take on BYU in a couple weeks from now. They come to Folsom Field as well, another night game on national television. But I think, guys, for me, the key theme here is I hope I see Caden Salter from the start, and I think this could be a good opportunity for him to find his groove.
Yeah, if you're the Colorado Buffaloes, you got to hope that this launch pad doesn't turn into a trap door and you end up falling right through it, because that's what's going to happen if you come out and get yourself behind early against these Wyoming Cowboys. They have a fun time coming and playing Colorado. They play Colorado State every year. They have familiarity traveling, coming down. They have a routine to it, right? And not only that, there's a sense of pride. And I think that's one thing that you have to take into account, because although this is not a historic rivalry, when you have two states that border each other and have passion and pride in football specifically, like the Wyoming Cowboys do, they're going to come out to support. Their fans are going to be present as well at Folsom. That's something you have to take into account for. So in terms of it being a springboard, I think if you come out and thump them, it could be, but ultimately I really don't see this as any way of building momentum. It's more of a way of just reassuring yourself and giving you more confidence in your team.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, when we were talking about Delaware, it was like, can this game be a launching pad? Can this game be a launching pad moving forward? It clearly wasn't. But now it needs it. I look at it now as, it doesn't matter if this can or can't. It needs to be. This doesn't matter if it's like, we'll win and we'll see what we can generate from there. This has to be it. This is make or break. And I understand that this is a game that isn't really seen as like a huge game, or a game that, Colorado is going to be, fighting tooth and nail to get this win, and it's going to determine the rest of their season. But determining the rest of their season could actually be the case. If you go out in this game and, I'm not saying lose, but if you go out in this game and you put together a sloppy performance and you're hanging your heads going into the locker room because you're thinking, man, we won, but it could have been better, you got to turn right around. It only gets harder from there. This is the easiest it is going to be for the rest of the season. And there is no excuse in my mind to do anything less than demolish this team this weekend. So, on that note, how much should Colorado win by to give you confidence going into Big 12 that this has been a launching pad?
I don't see it as a score. I see it as a how they do it. I think this offense is aimless. This offense is completely aimless. There's no identity. There's nothing they can really rely on or they do really well. Obviously, the running backs have looked good. The wide receivers have looked good in spurts. But there needs to be kind of a sense of direction. There needs to be a consistent thing they go to all night. And when there isn't a star, it's hard to find when there's no Shador, there's no Travis. That's obviously been the identity of Colorado's offense these past 2 seasons. It's been the pass game, it's been Shador, it's been Trav. Now you have to find someone that, whether it be a Marion Miller, whether it be Joseph Williams, that's that go-to guy. And if you can find that and have the run game open things up for that guy or two, that can definitely assure you a little bit more about, who you can go to when things get tight against bigger opponents.
Listen, they can't come out like they did against, just last weekend against Houston, right? And I talk about what Harrison was saying. This game has to be a domination, but for me, more importantly, how does CU come out in the first half, right? I think they can't give Wyoming any sense of belief in this game because the Cowboys, I guarantee you, they sense blood in this program. They probably are coming up here to Boulder to win. I mean, obviously they're coming to win the football game, but they probably have a lot of confidence, maybe more than they did a couple weeks ago, guys. And again, I talked about Caden Salter earlier, and I think that's kind of what CU needs right now. Is I think the word you're looking for is stability, right? This program is lacking an identity. This team is lacking an identity, I should say. Salter can bring that stability because recently, guys, it's just been a blunderstorm of events for this football.
Yeah, I think there's 2 numbers I'm going to shout out. If you're talking about building confidence that you're going to be able to compete with teams and you're just going to, have a kind of competitive season, I think winning by 10 points is good. I think that shows you're a good enough team that you're going to come out week in basis, and you might not win or you're not going to win all of these games, but you're going to be competitive at the very least, right? You're not going to be getting blown out. But if you want to show that you're going to be able to come out and still potentially compete for a Big 12 title and come talk about flipping the table and running things in Boulder, you better win by 3 scores, right? You need to come out and put a serious statement win on Wyoming and have multiple people involved in the offense, right? Running backs got to get in the end zone, receivers got to get in the end zone, and you got to show that consistency, like you guys mentioned, whether it's the quarterback play or whether it's you put it all on the offensive line and say, we're going to trust you guys, ride our 3 backs or 4 backs now that Dallin Hayden should be, fully back in the mix, and see what you guys can do and how you guys can take us to victory.
Yeah, I agree that a win is a win, regardless. You'll always be happy after a win. But I also agree that it's not about necessarily a score, but how they do it. I think the score can be indicative of that. I say 20 points at least, and it can't just be a 20 points of like we scored 20 points in garbage time, we had a turnover that leads to points.
Delaware was 31-7, and they almost outgained us.
Precisely. It needs to be 20 points of thumping. That needs to be 20 points of we destroyed you and then we let off the gas. That's the type of 20 points it needs to be. I think that if it's anything less than that, it's not only going to be an eyebrow raiser for us, but for them walking into the locker room, they'll know, man, we left it out. We left some stuff on the field.
Yeah.
And it was not what we had hoped it to be, and it could be more. And they'll kind of hang their heads on that, I fear. But we're going to look back to last week just one more time, and we are going to check out Leo talking with Joseph Williams and checking out another local restaurant here in Boulder.
Week 3, Colorado at Houston. Checking out wings once again. Here's Joseph Williams.
So we've been asking everyone, do you have a favorite food spot in Boulder so far? And if so, what do you get?
Oh, favorite food spot. I like this wing spot out here called Wing Shack.
Okay.
And yeah, I like to get their lemon pepper wings.
All
So
right.
like, that's probably my favorite spot out here so far.
Hopping straight into a flat. Let's give it a bite. Really good crunch. Joseph Williams is a really lengthy dude. He's long. He's got a crazy catch radius. Kind of reminds me of these fries right here. Joseph Williams held in 5 catches last week against Delaware. Utilized a lot in the short game, but he's hoping to show what he can do with the ball in his hands after the catch, or in contested scenarios like this one. This Colorado offense has so many weapons, whether it's Joseph Williams, Hakeem Williams, Sincere Brown, Draylon Miller, or in the running back room, Simeon Price, DeKalen Taylor, who basically is another wide receiver, and Michael Welch are all feasible weapons that these quarterbacks are half going to take advantage of for Colorado to get a win. Colorado's defense held up to their end of the bargain last Saturday against
It's week 3.
Simeon Price, DeKalen Taylor, who basically is another wide receiver, and Michael Welch are all feasible weapons that these quarterbacks are half going to take advantage of for Colorado to get a win. Colorado's defense held up to their end of the bargain last Saturday against Delaware, but it's going to be the wide receiver core of Colorado's offense that needs to stand up, and it starts with Joseph Williams. Ooh, we left nothing but the bone, just like Colorado's going to have to do this Friday night if they want to get the dub. Thank you so much, Wing Shack, for having us. Here's the address. As always, I'm Leo Rivera IV. Let's go Buff Sports.
Yeah, Joseph Williams, certainly a guy that we're hoping to see that type of explosivity out of in this offense. We talked about needing a spark plug. He's one of the guys that was sort of looked at to do that this season, and hasn't really been that role just yet, but excited to see what he can bring to the table. But looking outside of the lens of the Buffaloes, let's look around the Big 12. Which team so far, we're almost through non-conference games for most teams, which Big 12 team has impressed you the most through these first few weeks?
It's the team that's proved me right. It's the Utah Utes. I had them as my Big 12 pick to win the conference, and they've looked as impressive as anybody. I know they haven't maybe played, and looking how good UCLA has been and, having to already fire their coach, they haven't maybe played the toughest schedule of any team in the Big 12, but they've looked pretty dominant. They've looked like an offense that can use their quarterback, wield their line play was always going to be good. But now that they have some dynamic play in the backfield, Devin Dampier, he's my guy. So Utah for sure.
Guys, there's this football program in Ames, Iowa that just seems to always be showing up at the top of the Big 12 standings come year's end. Iowa State, can we talk about them? First of all, traveled to Ireland, right, to start the season. There's a bunch of these, Houdini curses about going over there. Not only do they win against Kansas State, who, doesn't turn out to be too good, but regardless, I digress. They come back home, right, short week, lot to travel, and don't play the best opponent. Don't get me wrong, South Dakota, but they absolutely demolish them. And then the bigger one, though, guys, beating their rival Iowa on their home turf. That's something they haven't done in a long time. This program knows what it takes to win. In my opinion, they've been the most impressive so far, and the track record shows that Matt Campbell's teams will be there in those Big 12 championships come season ends. Listen, they won 11 games last season. My favorite thing that they did in 2024, though, guys, was who can forget the Pop-Tart Bowl victory over Miami, a Miami team with Cam Ward on it. That was a fun one to watch.
My team's actually going to be one that, while I don't think they're going to be, the best team in the Big 12 or top team, but it's going to be the BYU Cougars. And that's just because of the drama within the offseason, right? We saw them lose their quarterback and go through that entire turmoil and have so much questions after having that big, bowl game victory over Colorado about how they're going to come into the season. And you saw, just a couple of weeks ago, the amount of points they're able to put up is just absolutely tremendous. The fact that this offense has been able to come in and find its groove and, connect, considering a lot of people, including myself, really kind of doubted the ability for them to come in and find their quarterback. I think it's been impressive so far.
Guys, for me, it's Kansas State. I'm kidding. You've made me look like a fool, Kansas State. I'm going to hop on the Utah bandwagon.
Yes.
I've loved this team and what I've seen from them so far. Devon Dampier has turned into one of the best acquisitions in the transfer portal of any team. He's been everything for this offense, and I think it's really helped them that they've gotten out of the Cam Rising era and they've really turned this team around and given it a new look. And I've mentioned their defense in previous weeks. This defense impresses the heck out of me. John Henry Daly, their defensive end, we're going to talk about 13 tackles, and he's also got 5 sacks already at this point in the season, which leads both of those lead the team for Utah, and that is incredibly exciting. For this defense. I've mentioned their linebackers. Safety Jackson Bean, 2 interceptions and 12 tackles, which is second most on their team. He has looked really, really good, and overall, Utah has impressed the heck out of me. Looking to West Virginia, though, they're a team that none of us mentioned, of course. They've kind of been a weird team. We saw them lose to Ohio 2 weeks ago, but then they come into the backyard brawl and they beat Pittsburgh. What type of team is West Virginia among this already weird Big 12?
They are Rich Rodriguez. That's pretty much what I think. They are a team that plays with passion. They're a team that plays with heart. They don't have the talent to really compete for a conference title, but they're going to play with anybody. They're going to scrap. They're going to claw, especially, feeding off that Morgantown crowd. They're a feisty team. Who knows what they can put together after a win like that. And, yeah, I think they're not a Big 12 contender yet, but, down a couple years down the line, if they get some more talent, they're building something.
I think in Morgantown, right, this is a team, as a program that always seems to play up to its competition. I remember there's a lot of, old Big 12 days where OU and West Virginia would go blow for blow in games that West Virginia wasn't really thought of to have any chance of, and they'd win some of those. But listen, let's not just brush off to people talk about the loss to Ohio. This is a Bobcats team that just went into the shoe, played the #1 team in the country last time I checked, in the Ohio State Buckeyes, and they were really, honestly, held their own for 3 quarters. I mean, this team is not that pushover, right? Like, yes, it doesn't look good on West Virginia's resume. They went to Ohio. They lost again. They probably shouldn't have won. What I want to look at, though, for West Virginia is you guys talk about maybe not having a chance in this Big 12 standings. And while I do agree, I will say they have a very favorable schedule, right? A bunch of their tough opponents, Texas Tech, Utah, TCU, they all get at home. Those could be some upset opportunities, too, for Rich Rodriguez to build on this momentum in his first year back.
I think when you talk about this team, you got to be optimistic in the fact of it's what they did after the loss. You mentioned that loss to Ohio, but it wasn't the fact that they were crumbled. Their spirits weren't crumbled after it. It motivated them. That loss was more of a launch pad for them than the win against Delaware was for Colorado there, Liam. And when you talk about that performance against a Pitt team that's physical, that's stingy, that I personally thought was going to be able to come in and outmuscle them, they did a phenomenal job. That was an impressive win, and it's something you're going to be able to build on. And as you have this young team that's developing, that's planting the early seeds of culture, like you mentioned, Harrison, those are the kind of wins that are going to, stick with you, that you're going to remember. And when it's later down in the season and you're playing a team that maybe people think you can't thump with, you're going to have the confidence personally that, maybe we can come out and hang with these guys and be able to, pull off an upset every once in a while.
Yeah, I think this West Virginia team, I don't know. I think that I like Ohio as a team. I think they're a really good team, and I was really impressed by what they put together for those first few quarters against Ohio State. That blew me away. But I don't know. I think that the way that they played in that loss was a little bit more telling to me than the backyard brawl. I think that they stepped it up a little bit for the backyard brawl. You obviously got to. It's one of the biggest rivalries in college football. They bring extra energy. That team plays with a different fire for that game. And it was still a very close game. I just don't really see like we mentioned earlier, the Big 12 is a gauntlet. You're running a gauntlet in the Big 12, and as favorable as your schedule can be in the Big 12, there is a certain limit to that. And
Correct.
I think that this team is not going to be able to string that together for very long. Darian Lewis on their defense is kind of a one-man show. He really pulls that defense together, but that's, again, not something you can rely on in the long term. So I'm not buying in on West Virginia, but I will say I was very impressed by the win over Pittsburgh. They really pulled together, and that shows what that team certainly can be. It's just now a question of, can they do that consistently? But we're going to look – we've focused a lot on offense. Let's look at defense specifically. Who in the Big 12 has your favorite defense right now?
Well, I can't say I've watched all of them, but the one I did watch this past week, Houston, they look good. They looked dimensional. They had McCutcheon at corner. They had a really solid defensive line that could, in spurts get beat, but for the most part didn't allow Colorado to really assert the run. Overall, their defense looked pretty stout. I mean, maybe it was more of Staub wasn't ready. Staub wasn't the guy. The offense was more at fault for some of those lapses. But in their other opportunities that they've had to play, they've shown nothing but really solid play. Both in the secondary, they rally to the ball, and they're physical, and they're my favorite defense to watch, at least.
Well, guys, when I think of BYU as a football program, my mind doesn't go to defense right away, but they shut out in their opening game, right? Portland State 69-0. But guess what? Sorry. They held Stanford for just 3 points. Again, creating 3 turnovers in that same game. That's a Power 4 program, regardless of what you think about Stanford or quality. And BYU, again, they do come to Folsom next week. I think CU is going to really struggle to put up points against them. And listen, they're winning in convincing fashion. Leo, you talked about there was a bit of an identity crisis with this program, right? Coming into this season. But, I think that BYU can be a contender when it comes into the month of November.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Shane, on that aspect. And that's kind of part of the reason why this BYU team was, one of the teams that's impressed me. Because not only the fact that you have this, change within your offense, but you're relying on a defense that's actually able to, be consistent. And when you have that cornerstone, you're able to go out and make mistakes as an offense. You're able to have that wiggle room to kind of play and experiment because you have that safety net back there that that these guys, especially the linebacker core specifically, is going to fly around and make plays and assert their will across, the Big 12. And I think that gives them a big advantage looking at a lot of these other Big 12 opponents is who have a lot of stout quarterback play. And, of course, we've talked about the offensive weapons that have been so prevalent in the Big 12 throughout all these years. You've got to have a defense to be competitive.
Yeah, I'm going to stay in the state of Utah and go back to the Utes. I mentioned them a good bit. I don't want to spend too long talking about them. But, the linebacking core was something I was very excited about going into the season. They've played great. Their pass rush has been elite. As I mentioned earlier, John Henry Daly, 5 sacks already. He's looked great. Their secondary is looking stout. Overall, just a complete defense. And when you're in a conference like the Big 12, that's what you need. That's the formula right there, and that's how you win games. But now we will shift back to offense. Who has your favorite quarterback in the Big 12 right now?
It's not a team that I envision winning the Big 12, but it's a team that I envision staying in it simply off the back of their quarterback. That's Sawyer Robertson at Baylor. And It's a guy that was kind of a dual threat last year, wasn't even the starter going into last season, and came into his own, has kind of changed his play style up to more of a pocket passer, but that can still move. And he's been flawless so far. I mean, 10 touchdowns to 2 picks, had an incredible game, I think he had 450 passing yards against SMU. And against a defense like that, against that type of competition, he's been amazing this season. So got to go Sawyer, and maybe that's the basic pick. But I think the closest thing to a Heisman candidate you can find in the Big 12 is Sawyer Robertson.
For me, I got to look to Texas Tech and Baron Morton, right? This is a 4-year starter for the Red Raiders now, guys. And you look at what succeeds in college football, especially in today's landscape, it's experience, right? And that matters. Not only does he have the experience, he currently leads the country in passing touchdowns with 11. He's got the second best QBR in the nation as well. And listen, Tech hasn't really been, challenged too much so far. But they are not just beating. You want to talk about dominating? They're blowing out their competition, outscoring the opponents 174-35 in just 3 games. That's a pretty big margin.
Yeah, I'm going to stay in the warmer climate, and I'm going to talk about the Arizona State Sun Devils and their quarterback, Sam Leavitt, who I've personally been a big fan of the last couple of years. And you talk about specifically his relationship with head coach Kelly Dillingham. These guys trust each other and have a relationship that's tighter than, dare I say, any other head coach quarterback duo in this country, right? They really have a feel for what they want to do as an offense. And I think even though he's struggled, initially kind of open up the season, he's going to start finding his footing and he's going to start getting more comfortable. And when you talk about his ability to make off-platform throws and throwing on the move and, creating excitement elements of quarterback play, he can do that. He can make all those throws, and it's just something that's really exciting to see kind of his progression as a player. And I'm looking forward to watching, his improvement throughout the season to see how that relationship with the coach carries on. But he's personally one of my favorite guys to watch.
I've talked about him in our first 2 episodes, but I want to go back to Jalen Daniels out of Kansas. I think he kind of fell under the radar because they had this bye week, and now they're not exactly looked at. His stats are kind of falling back to what everyone else is catching up to. But this is still the most dynamic passer, I think, in the Big 12. I think this guy is still the most. He elevates his team more than any other team or any other quarterback does. I think that we see his. He's certainly a dual threat quarterback, but he doesn't focus on that exclusively. He uses it when he needs to. He's got a heck of an arm, and he can fit the ball into some incredibly tight spaces. His offensive line was not looking good and hasn't really looked good for any of his time at Kansas, and he has still made it work. Of course, he's dealt with the injuries, which kind of on them, I'm not going to lie. But he's still pushed through that, and when he's been on the field, he has looked great. He's elevated Kansas. I love what he is doing there. But to move back to Utah, I've talked a good bit about him, but let's hear a little bit more. What has been the main key to their bounce back this season from what it was last year?
I mean, it's pretty simple. You look at the way they recruit, the way they build, it's always about the line play, but the difference this year is simply Devin Dampier. He's been dynamic. He's been fluid. He hasn't missed a beat in the step up from New Mexico to the Power 4 level. He's looked, as dynamic as any quarterback really in the country, considering the offense he's having to play within. It's a run-first team. It's a team that feeds off its offensive line, but he's made that offense, he's diversified it so much that it raises the ceiling of that team by so much. While they're going to always have a good defense, they have 2 top offensive line prospects in this year's draft. The quarterback play is ultimately perfect for that type of team.
You guys know what I love in a football team? It's a bend but don't break defense, right? And again, listen to me. Utah, they haven't faced the best competition. I feel like I keep on saying this about some Big 12 teams, but they've only given up 2 touchdowns all season. 2 touchdowns, right? I talked about how they struggled against Wyoming a little bit last week, but they still were able to hold that offense down and only gave up 6 points during the whole game. You mentioned it, Dampier. I think he's one of the best. Talk about dual threats, Jalen Daniels, dual threat quarterbacks in the country. He had over 1,000 rushing yards last season for New Mexico. I think he's probably going to eclipse that mark once again this year. But yeah, I mean, they're going to be challenged this weekend, right? They play Texas Tech. We'll get to that game a little bit later, but I'm pretty confident that their defense can somewhat slow down that air raid attack from the Red Raiders.
Yeah, that was a great point, Shane. I know, Liam, you as well harped on that defense, and that, plays in so well with Utah's identity. But it's the quarterback, right? It's Dampier. I mean, at the end of the day, there's a reason why quarterbacks get paid more than any other position in football. That's the most sought after, hardest position to find, really. And when you get someone like Dampier who's a leader, who's able to make these plays with his legs, it sparks up that offensive line. It sparks up those skill positions, and it sparks up your running backs because they want to play for that guy. When you're an offensive lineman, and these big Utah offensive linemen know how to move some guys, I'll tell you that, you get excited when you know your quarterback's got your back, and he's going to be a leader, and he's going to come out and do everything possible to get the victory. And I think, all of that combined together is really what has provided the spark for Utah.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, I've been talking about their defense all season. They've been above what I could have expected. But, and you guys talk about Dampier. He's, of course, been the key to that offense. I think that just being out of the Cam Rising era has really done a lot for this team. Yeah. And, he was a good quarterback at times.
We saw him against... appreciate 26-year-old Cam
Rising.
Exactly.
Cam Rising against, USC in the,
that man was a grown dude. He had a family when he played.
Yes, he did. And I mean, I mean, he was, but you mentioned he was getting up there in age, and we started to see his body was probably aged a good bit older than he was already. He suffered a lot of injuries, and you didn't know if you were going to have a healthy quarterback to put out on the field every single week. And that was a struggle. That was exactly what cost them last year. They knew they were going to have a good defense, and it was a solid defense, but they did not have a quarterback. Yeah. And it was constantly up in the air. After he went down, it was like, okay, well, who do we go to? And they never answered that question, and the team never got back on track.
We talked about it before the season. It was simply stability. Having stability in that spot, and the rest is going to take care of itself.
Yep, I am right there with you. But let's move to our pick'ems for the week. We're going to continue with the Big 12, our first game of the Big 12, the North Carolina Tar Heels traveling to the Bounce House. They're going to take on UCF. Who do you got?
I got UCF. Surprising a little. I mean, if you talked to me before the season, I would have probably said North Carolina. But the way they came into a road environment in TCU in that big game, they didn't look quite ready. This team didn't look like it had enough talent to really make up for. I mean, obviously they have Bill Belichick's their coach. I'm not going to say they make up for coaching. But to make up for some of the, I guess, instability they've had at coaching at times. So I think UCF, their defenses look pretty solid so far. I got the Knights there.
I'm going to agree with it here. I mean, I almost spelled Knights wrong too, guys, on my document. I got UCF in this one, and I think they're just going to run all over, the North Carolina defense. You mentioned it, Harrison. Absolutely embarrassing performance after that first drive in the Monday night game to open up Week 1. That defense gave up 258 rushing yards and a pair of really long touchdowns to that TCU attack. Listen, I think UCF, they're at home. Scott Frost is back. They've got some kind of, identity. We talked about that. But more importantly, there's excitement in that program right now. They might not be, an 8-9 win team, but they can get to a bowl game if they win games like this.
Yeah, this one's kind of iffy for me because originally I was looking to UCF because, based on everything you guys are saying, right, this team seems like they're just overall the better team and that they have more consistency and trust within their head coaching staff. But they just haven't been impressive in their victories, man. Like, when I look at the fact that you played Jacksonville State that close and you probably could have lost that game, it gives me a lot of worry when you talk about a coach like Bill Belichick who understands that his team just got whooped on, right? And that's going to be, something that's in the back of their mind when they come out into this game. And I personally think that UNC is going to have a bounce back and able to find their footing against an opponent that I think is, around their skill level of competition. I don't think it's going to be a pretty game. I don't think it's going to be a great game by any metrics, but I do see the University of North Carolina coming out on top.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think UCF obviously haven't lost yet, but these games haven't been. I mean, they play an FCS school, they get a win there.
Yeah.
And then before that, it was a really, really close game against Jacksonville State, which does not give me a ton of confidence. North Carolina, I mean, obviously that first game was not a confidence booster either, getting stomped in your home on your home field by TCU. But I think TCU is a good team, and I think while Bill Belichick may not be the same play calling coach that he was back in his younger years, age does not change how much you get on your team after a loss. I mean, have you ever had a coach, that old coach on your high school team, who will rip into you after you've lost a game? I mean,
I had coaches ream into me after we won games,
Yeah.
Liam, so I kind of, so I already know how those losses are. Those are, rooms you never want to be in.
Exactly, and I don't think that's going to change for Bill Belichick. They come out and they respond well with 2 straight wins. Gio Lopez has bounced back, and his inconsistency was one of the primary contributors to that loss. Obviously, the defense looked poor, but Gio Lopez, didn't complete a pass for how long was it? Did anyone know?
It was like
how
an
much?
hour and a
It was
half.
about an hour and a
Or
half
something like that.
of game time that he.
Hey, give him
did
some
he-
credit. There's a lot of commercials on that, Brock.
Yes, true. There is a lot of commercials, but an hour and a half, no completed passes. That is still very scary to see. But he's bounced back well. He's played well in these last 2 games. I'm going to go with North Carolina to take down UCF. Next up, though, we are going to look to the Kansas Jayhawks taking on the West Virginia Mountaineers. Who do you got?
I know we showed some love to Rich Rodriguez, his program, West Virginia earlier. I got to go with Kansas, though. It's going to be that renovated stadium. I'm sure the crowd will be energized. Jalen Daniels, you talked about him. He's been dynamic. They're really, kind of going under the radar this year, in terms of the stories, getting, teams like Utah, Texas Tech, a lot of storylines following them. But Kansas, they're going to be a quietly really good team this year. I got the Jayhawks there.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you on this one, Harrison. Listen, for me, the difference is the storyline of this game is which team comes out better after both have had an exhausting rivalry game the week before, right? I know Kansas had a bye. They played Mizzou not too long ago. That's an emotionally exhausting game. Same deal here with West Virginia, right? They have a lot of energy after they beat Pitt. How do they come back and settle down? I think the bye week, and also you mentioned it, the home crowd for Kansas will be energetic. I have the Jayhawks by 2 touchdowns in this game.
Yeah, anytime, there's a close matchup or, I'm a little on the fence, I always go back to the quarterback's play. And we talk about Daniels under center. I trust him a lot more than, West Virginia in that aspect. And I think they're going to come out and play a close game at first. I think West Virginia's going to be able to keep it close in the early half. But like you mentioned, Shane, I think by the end of it, it's going to get pretty ugly. And this is, going to surprise me if it's not a 2-score victory for Kansas.
Yeah, and I've mentioned Jalen Daniels a lot. I'm not going to harp on it anymore, but you look at the way that this team has played. Look at how they played. Their 1 loss is to Missouri, a now ranked team. They played that team well. They played that team very well, and Missouri is an underrated team. That offense is firing on all cylinders right now, and they played them incredibly, incredibly well. So yeah, I'm taking the Jayhawks in this game as well as a team effort. Jalen Daniels, of course, though, going to have a great game. Next up, though, let's move to the Arizona State Sun Devils traveling to take on the Baylor Bears.
This is going to be a great game. This is going to be an awesome game. I'm going to go with Arizona State. I know I showed love to Sawyer Robertson earlier, but I think Arizona State is the more complete team. And even though Baylor's at home too, things are kind of moving in their favor. If you really, think a lot of the Baylor team, they have tons of talent on their defense too. But Arizona State, I think they're going to have kind of a get-right game, show that they're still going to be a force in the conference. There was obviously some worries after the Mississippi State loss, but I think this is kind of a get-right game for them on the road, making a statement.
Yeah, listen, I keep on agreeing with you, Harrison. I don't know what this is today, but I have the Sun Devils as well. That might change in a couple picks, I guess, hopefully. But listen, you want to talk about how big of a game Texas Tech Utah is? I honestly think this could be the best game in the conference all week, right? You have 2 teams that are kind of in the same kind of situation right now. They both have a loss in their schedule. And while Sawyer Robertson has been good this season, Baylor lost that game against Auburn on their home turf. This one is the same situation, right? Again, it's going to come down for me to which team, or which quarterback, I should say, can protect the football better. Leo, you gave some, love to Levin earlier. He's a great quarterback, but the guy threw 2 picks in that crucial loss to Mississippi State. I think, he's a great player. Can you keep the ball on his own team, right? Don't turn the ball over. And I give the edge to the Sun Devils because of the coaching. You brought up Kenny Dillingham earlier as well. But listen, they're going to have to stop the rush because Bryson Washington for Baylor, remember the name, guys. He's got over 300 rushing yards so far already this season. Baylor's going to want to run it. They're going to run the ball a lot. I have ASU 31-28. I think, though, this is the best game in the conference this week.
That is a phenomenal point. Because when you come into this game, I was also teetering on the fact that I don't know if it's going to be Baylor ASU. And there's a couple of, games within this matchup that I truly believe are almost like a 50-50. And you could really do a coin flip. But again, I look at the Sun Devils, and I like Sam Levitt too much. I mean, I just spent this, last segment or a couple segments ago harping on the fact that I think they're really going to get clicking. But this Baylor team is legit. I'm going to give them their flowers, right? Because I think this is one that later on in the season you're going to see is going to be hard out in the Big 12. And they're going to really be fighting and clawing and scratching their way. I mean, you look at that SMU game that they had a few weeks ago. To be able to come back and put yourself in a position to, come out and win that game after you were down and should have lost was ridiculous. It was absolutely insane, and I know it was going on at the same time as the Colorado game, but when you see something like that, it is truly motivating for a team to come in. But give me the Sun Devils. That's all I got to say. Kenny Dillingham's the man. He's rocking.
I like Arizona State, but I'm going to be honest. This is not the same Arizona State team to me. Baylor has the best defense I think that they have faced. I like Mississippi State's defense. They've impressed me. I think Baylor has a better defense. And I think Sam Levitt's going to struggle more than he did against Mississippi State. Additionally, Sawyer Robertson, you talked about him. He is playing incredibly good football right now. And I think that Arizona State's defense has certainly taken a step back from last year. We've seen that in their games. I think he's going to carve them up. I think he is going to have his way with that defense. I'm going to go with the Bears to take down Arizona State. But up next, though, we have a Texas matchup, SMU and TCU. Who do you got?
I mean, this is the classic Texas duel right here. Two high-powered offenses. I'm going with SMU today. I like the offense that they have just a tiny bit more, at least compared to TCU's defense, how they work off of each other. I think SMU plays a little more complementary football. We haven't seen the best of their defense so far, but I think they still have enough talent to get it done on the road, too.
So I can finally disagree with you here, right, Harris? Listen, TCU I think wins by a lot more than people expect. I really like this Horned Frogs team. It's led by Josh Hoover, who's under center at quarterback for them. The difference, though, I talked about taking care of the football guys. Like the stain in memory for Kevin Jennings, SMU, in my mind, is that college football playoff game against Penn State, where the guy literally looked like he was lost. Right? He threw 2 pick sixes. Just completely was under pressure. And I think that TCU gets some momentum going here. This could be a close game. I actually have them by more than 2 touchdowns. I think they win by 17 points.
Nice.
I just don't like what I saw from SMU. Listen, I think that TCU can come into this game and maybe make a statement to the rest of the Big 12.
This one's interesting because what SMU team are you going to get? Are you going to get the team that's going to be able to come out and pounce on you and hold on to a lead and just play with that and be consistent? Or are you going to get, this team, like you said, that comes out and could be lost at times, and that's going to cough up and make just silly mistakes and put yourselves in situations where, as a team, you just can't get into, right? There should be no way you go out and blow a game against Baylor where you have the lead like that. And so I think those kind of issues raise concerns. But at the same time, I think this SMU team at its core, when they play at their best, is a better team than TCU. So I'm going to go ahead and ride with the chance that I think that SMU is going to play a perfect game and get the victory against the Horned Frogs.
Yeah, I like that you touched on the Penn State-SMU playoff game because I personally have not seen the same Kevin Jennings since that game. That was where I
might
feel
never
like
come back.
I don't know. I think he is like that. Kevin Jennings is still in the locker room at Penn State. I have not seen the same Kevin Jennings since that game. And TCU, on the other hand, offense is firing on all cylinders. You mentioned that this is the classic Texas matchup. It's going to be offense, and their offense has put. The fact of the matter is, their offense has put up 90 points in 2 games. Josh Hoover, dog. That offense is going to rally behind him. He's going to throw the ball all over the field. I'm going to take TCU in that game.
Can I mention one more thing before we move on to the next game? We got a couple of Big 12 ACC matchups this week,
we do.
Guys. There's a little beef between who's the better conference.
Yeah.
Yes.
We'll probably be able to have a little bit more talent.
Yeah.
And again, I took the 2. I'm pretty sure I took the 2 Big 12 teams in those games, but a little bit of a conference rivalry. I'm excited to see how that pans out.
But moving on to our biggest ranked versus ranked matchup here, we got the Texas Tech Red Raiders to take on the Utah Utes, number 16 team in the country. Who do you have taking this game? This is huge for Big 12 implications.
It is, it's insanely massive. I mean, it's got to be the biggest game, at least from now until you envision. These are 2 best teams of the conference. I mean, that's at least my opinion right now. These are teams that were built extremely well, that added a lot. Obviously, Texas Tech in there, oil money. And then Utah, obviously, with the big addition as Dampier. I'm sticking with my guns, though. I'm going on Big 12 pick. I'm going with the Utes.
Yeah, I got to agree with you once again here, Harrison. I think this is going to be a great game. Away with big noon kickoff, right? This is a big 10 a.m. Mountain Time kickoff in my book.
Yes.
Again, you mentioned the two best quarterbacks arguably in this conference. Dampier, I talked about Morton earlier. They haven't been too challenged, either one of them up to this point. I'm backing Utah's secondary to kind of slow down that Texas Tech offense. I gave them some love earlier in our segment. I think Utah wins on a last-second field goal, guys, with Gus Johnson losing his voice. Maybe a bit of a voice crack. They take this one 30-25.
One thing I'll agree on with you, Shane, is that this game's going to end in a last-second play. All right, whatever happens, I think this is going down in a final moment. It's going to be crazy. But I'm going to go ahead and ride the flip side. I'm going to ride with the Texas Tech Red Raiders and a team that's had that consistent quarterback, like you mentioned, that they've trusted, who's been around, who knows the block. But not only that, they went in and they spent money where it matters, baby. And that's the trenches, and that's the big dogs, the men who are going to come in and eat. Right? And they're going to come back, and I think that, like you said, this game could go either way, but they're going to get the victory.
Yeah, I think that this is the classic scenario of the unstoppable force versus the immovable object. I cannot wait to see the classic Texas Tech air raid offense that they've continued to run for so many years and has continued to produce so many good quarterbacks, facing this Utah defense that flat out has been one of the best in the country, if not the best in the country. This has been an incredible, incredible defense. And we get to see these two clash. How lucky is that? That's an amazing matchup, especially this early in the year. But I think when you talk about early season struggles, where do you tend to see them? It tends to be on the offensive side. Usually, defenses gel a little bit earlier than you see with offenses. I love what Texas Tech brings to the table. I don't think they have the same defense as Utah does to stop Devin Dampier. I think he's going to have a great day. And then I think that Utah, their defense is going to get the crucial stops needed to take down Baron Morton and that offense. Give me the Utes winning that game. But now...
So none of you guys like oil is what I'm hearing at the stable.
No. None of us are trusting in the oil money.
Texas Tech sure does.
They do. But next, we move on to our home game. The Colorado Buffaloes return to Folsom Field to take on the Wyoming Cowboys in the final game of their non-conference schedule. Who do you got?
I got Colorado. I don't want to build any suspense on that. I think the Colorado Buffaloes come in there and, maybe they'll feed off of Ralphie, see if that happens. Caden Salter, I think will get the start, and I want to see what the offense looks like around him. I want to see. I hope Pat Shurmur takes like 5 energy drinks before this game.
Yes.
I want to see a high octane offense. I want to see a defense that can at least get off the field. It doesn't have. I don't have to see, 5 interceptions or 10 sacks. I want to see a defense that can consistently put together stops, and if I see that, then I have a little bit more confidence about Colorado going forward.
Listen, Harrison, thankfully, I did just have a solo shot, but we're on camera too, guys. Listen, I'm talking to the Colorado football program right now. If you do not have a sense of urgency for this game, I don't know what game you're going to have a sense of urgency for, right? This game, it's not going to be glitz and glamour, right? I'm back on camera 3 now. Thanks for the solo shot. Listen, parents are going to have to slum it out late into the night. I think that Wyoming is going to come. They sense blood. I'm going to give Colorado the advantage, but I think they might struggle, guys, like they have in the past 3 games. Listen, Wyoming's defense, you're talking about getting stops. I think they're going to get enough stops in the first half. And CU, you want to talk about a bad third down conversion team? Oh, my goodness. This team is horrendous to watch on third down. It's because usually they're in these 3rd and 7 situations where, maybe Salter can actually use his legs to benefit them. I have CU, though, winning by 10 points, 31-21, but this one's going to go late into the night, unfortunately.
Man, this is a late night game. So I hope that, Pat Shurmur and the coaching staff is going to follow in Juju Lewis's footsteps and pick up their Starbucks drink before the game. Yes. I know y'all saw that ad. All right.
Pumpkin spice is back.
Pumpkin spice is back. I'm a big pumpkin spice guy, I must admit. But, back on track. This Wyoming team poses so many threats. The way they were able to play Utah, when I was looking at that game at half, it scared me. All right, and I'm not even the one out there playing. I'm not even padding up, and I'm still having nightmares.
He's not going to pick Wyoming, right?
And I look at the fact that they're coming down from up on the border, and they're pissed off. and they're gonna come in and want to have a statement against the Colorado Buffaloes. But that's not going to happen on the return of Ralphie?
Nah.
Are you kidding me?
Game time.
I don't even know what the name of our new Ralphie is. They retired Ash, but we're going to see who comes out.
It was Ember, wasn't it?
Or Ember, my apologies, Ember.
Yeah.
We're going to see who comes out trotting out this week. But behind the legs of the offense, give me the Colorado Buffaloes.
Yeah, I know what you said, not building suspense. But man, I'm sorry. The panic button's right here. The panic button is right here, and I'm hovering over it right now. The Colorado Buffaloes are struggling, folks. There's no way around it. This team is struggling. Put your hands here. We're panicking, okay? We're waiting on this. We're holding our hands over this panic button.
I'm sweating, dude.
Until we can actually prove that we can beat a team. They lost by 16 against Houston. It's supposed to be our Big 12 tune-up game. The defense can't stop a clock, and their linebacking core. They actually have some decent linebackers. They're growing linebackers out in Wyoming. And I don't know if you knew this, but
those boys are big.
Utah figured it out, and I mean, eventually they adjusted. But I don't know if Colorado's got that same energy in there. We don't even know who we're trotting out at quarterback. But
Dion knows.
But I don't care who we're trotting out at quarterback. Send Dion out. Send Ralphie 7 out. Give me the Buffs by 1,000,000. No matter who we got running that offense, I'm taking the Buffs to destroy the Wyoming Cowboys. Thank you all for joining us here on SBS Football Live. Liam Howard alongside Harrison Simeon, Leo Rivera IV, and then, of course, Shane Holcomb. Thank you for joining us today for the first time. Thank you all for joining us here in the studio, and you heard it here first.